Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thanks so much for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community mentorship and learning. I'm your host, Dave Nava. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce and a military trailblazer. Each week, we invite a co-host or sometimes co-host to take part in the conversation so we can leverage their experience, their expertise, and their unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is exploring the Tableau Solution Engineer role and career path. So, if you're passionate about data analytics and helping customers solve business challenges through the magic of artificial intelligence and impactful visualizations, this is the session for you. I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-host for tonight's session, Mark Tossell. Mark is a lead solution engineer at Tableau. When he's not crushing problems with data toolsets, he's a prolific writer and speaker. Mark wrote a book on creating actionable insights using Tableau CRM, which is available on Amazon. Is a content writer for Salesforce Ben, the largest Salesforce blog in the world, and has spoken over 4,000 times in 10 countries and 43 U.S. states. As if that wasn't enough, he's also a Golden Hoodie Award recipient and regularly gives back to the Trailblazer community. It is awesome to have you co-hosting Office Hours with me, Mark. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, David. Nice to meet everyone.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so if you want to take a few minutes and further introduce yourself, share your amazing story, I can go ahead and present your slides.
It's great to be on the session, everyone. Thank you for your time. If you don't mind if I'm occasionally sipping from my coffee, it's not terribly early here, 7 a.m., not too bad, but I'm really glad to join you. And thank you, David, for the invite. I've always enjoyed your sessions. So next slide. My background and my journey into and through the Salesforce system have been extremely unusual. So I graduated from university here in Sydney, Australia, with a degree in mechanical engineering. Worked as an engineer for 2 years and hated the role. I was also at that time looking at some pretty significant life and career choices. So there was a pretty much a 180-degree shift. I went to the United States and studied for ministry as a Baptist minister, where I met my lovely wife, Christina, who's from Texas. And I was a minister for about 20 years. Next, please. During that time, unfortunately, in fact, my whole adult life, I've struggled with mental wellness and mental illness. I had very serious depression that was undiagnosed. It was later diagnosed as major depressive disorder. And I'm not sure if you use this expression in the United States, but here we often refer to depression as the black dog. Things got very bad, I would say, around 2014 or so. And unfortunately, there were some traumatic events in my family's life. My wife got cancer. We had some very serious financial reversals. My son was diagnosed with autism. Other things happened. And I essentially fell off the cliff, had a huge breakdown, mentally, physically, emotionally, was unable to function at all. And I took 4 months off as a medical furlough, tried to essentially get my life back. At that point, I actually felt that I might never work again. Things were very, very bad. Thankfully, I did recover well and went back into ministry, was unable to continue because of the emotional loads of being a minister, of counseling and carrying people's burdens, etc. And was advised by my doctor to seek a new career. I had a great degree, an engineering degree, but I hadn't used it for probably 25 years. So that wasn't an option. Began to look for work, resigned from ministry, had a job offer that fell through, and found myself unemployed and felt unemployable. Things got very desperate for us financially. We're a single income family. My wife cares for our son, and homeschools him full time. We're in a position where we're close to getting evicted from our home. I was unable to find work, even the most basic form of work. And then a friend of mine said, hey, he said, we've got a wealth management business. We're looking to get Salesforce. It's a CRM. Would you be interested in building that for us? And I said, absolutely, I would. Got off the phone, Googled Salesforce, Googled CRM, absolutely no idea what they were, zero IT background. And thankfully was hired. I had 4 weeks to prepare for that, believe it or not. Financial Services Cloud, by the way, which back in 2016, mid-2016, was a brand new product. So I spent 4 weeks in YouTube. Thank God I found Trailhead after a week, and a free structured online learning tool that was gamified, right up my alley. So dove into Trailhead probably 50 hours a week, rocked up, and the first 6 months were extraordinarily difficult. I'd arrive at work at 6 a.m. in the morning and open up the office, spend several hours learning, get into my day. I'm mapping processes that I didn't understand because it was an industry I was completely unfamiliar with. And then I was trying to map those processes in a platform that I did not understand. People often ask, what was the key to your success? I would honestly say, other than just curiosity, just persistence, just every day slogging it out, doing it tough, making mistakes, pushing through the fear, enduring the stress, worrying that I was going to destroy my friend's business by crashing Salesforce. But I fell in love with the platform, and thankfully began to really get a good grip on it, and picked up Pardot marketing automation as an engineer. That really fitted my brain. So really enjoyed that. And then the best thing of all was I fell into Einstein Analytics, or it was Wave then. Taught myself Einstein Analytics, built that for our business. We got a lot of recognition for what we did with Einstein Analytics, or CRM Analytics as it's called now. I had the privilege of speaking at Dreamforce in San Francisco on Einstein Analytics, and the global GM of Analytics, Katan Kakanis, asked us to start a Salesforce partner business in that space. So that's what we did 4.5 years ago. We founded a business which is now called Clear, and we built Salesforce, but focused heavily on CRM Analytics. I also took some online courses in machine learning and statistics, and learned machine learning and AI, which is probably my favorite area of the technology now. And that was about a 4-year journey, and for various different reasons, but largely because I just wanted to focus on an SE role. And I was an AE, an SE, I was in BD and post sales in our business. I ended up accepting a role at Salesforce, and now I am a solution engineer at Tableau. So pretty crazy journey. I'm extraordinarily grateful for my support group, my family, friends, the amazing Ohana ecosystem at Salesforce. I'll forever be in love with Trailhead. It literally changed my life. And you can probably imagine, after all of that journey, that's why I'm so passionate about giving back to the community. I love sharing my story. I know there's lots of people out there that struggle with mental wellness. Some people for a period, others like me, it's a lifelong challenge. And hopefully by sharing that story, I'll encourage others in their journey. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark, for sharing your story and for being vulnerable and sharing some of the difficulties that you faced, both with mental illness and with finances. There are a lot of us out there, myself included, who have struggled with mental illness throughout their careers. And it's good to hear that, we're not alone. Others have gone through similar and are still going through similar, challenges, but, that doesn't mean that we can't be successful. And I think that the Salesforce ecosystem is a great place to work because it's extremely supportive. And so I'm glad to hear that it's been that way for you as well. So at this point, what we'll go ahead and do is I'm just going to go over some quick admin items for those folks that may be joining for the first time. And then we'll launch right into the Q&A. And so I guess the takeaway, that I got, and that I think you should get as well from Mark's story, is not only can you talk to Mark about what it means to be a solution engineer, you can talk to him about what it means to be a solution engineer at Tableau, how it is to work at Tableau, data analytics, what it's like to be an AE. There's what it's like to be a dynamic public speaker. So many different topics we can dive into. So think about that as we're talking about these admin items. And we'll get into the questions. And so if you are joining for the first time, I always like to go and explain what Military Trailblazer Office Hours is about. So these sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with both military trailblazers and allies, everyone's welcome, to explore primarily non-technical Salesforce career and branding-related topics so that we can help you achieve your professional development and career-related goals as a group. So for the next hour, this is your opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and both ask and answer questions from your perspective, which of course provides additional diversity of experience to the answers that are given. Do keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I'm going to start posting in chat here pretty soon. And it'll be things that I've pulled from LinkedIn, such as volunteer opportunities, networking opportunities, maybe employment opportunities, knowledge articles, things about analytics. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's session, this is your session. Please feel free to do so. If you don't feel comfortable raising your hand in the Google Meet and speaking up, you can post your questions in chat, and I will get to those in the order that I see them. And so finally, what I've started kind of announcing is that tonight's session is being recorded. So if you'd like to share a attribution-free comment, for whatever reason you don't want this to be recorded, just let me know before you speak, and I'll go ahead and take a note of that, and we'll make sure that we edit that out of the final recording. It's much harder to do if we find out after the fact. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the questions. And so, Mark, this is, and I'll go ahead and start with the first one. This is the first time we've had a Tableau professional in office hours. And so what I'd like to do is not only cover what it means to be a Tableau SE, but what it's like to work at Tableau in general, how Trailblazers can get started on their data analytics journey by leveraging Tableau's free products and tool sets, as well as Trailhead. So to kick us off, could you kind of explain your role as a Tableau Solution Engineer and what responsibilities that entails?
I've tried to summarize it here for you. I think there's probably more to the role than people might at first think. So first of all, we work with prospects' data to deliver product demonstrations, and these are really fun. I mean, the internal joke is that SEs are demo gods. I'd like to think that there's a lot more to what we do than that, but obviously, as someone in my life who's been involved with presenting and public speaking since really a teenager, I love that part of what I do. An aspect of that that's critical, that's often neglected, is in order to deliver a great demo, you've got to have a great understanding of the customer and their use case. So it's really critical that you have that ability to discover the customers, the landscape of their business, their challenges, their problems. We're not selling a product, we're solving a problem. That's always has to be the mindset. We provide strategic pre-sale support for sales, including needs analysis, what we call customer-centric discovery, data review, product demonstrations, as I mentioned. And in there, it can get quite technical. You can get into the weeds a bit in terms of the data pipeline, the technology stack, the platform architecture, but also you've got to almost have two mindsets: the mindset of a technologist and the mindset of a business person. I think for me, it does help that I helped run a business for 4 years. I do understand the challenges and the pain of leading a business. So if you're looking at this role, it's great to put your business hat on as well as your technology hat on to make sure you're grasping the challenges, the environment, etc. We drive aspects of successful proofs of concept from requirements and design to training and delivery. We also work with Salesforce and Tableau partners, as they're often involved in building proof of concepts, small unpaid ones at times, and then often quite significant paid proofs of concept. And we help in that process. And we do support partners. We conduct joint meetings, technical proofs, seminars, prezos, as we call them in Australia, presentations, demonstrations. We communicate with our sales team about sales activities and strategies. So a big part of my role that I probably didn't surprise me coming from a business background, but it may surprise some people, is a lot of time is spent in collaboration. There's a lot of communication, written and verbal. So I think, as we get in later on into the skills that are required, you really want to work on your communication skills. Recently, I reread a book for the fourth time. I'm a massive reader and I love learning. And the book is called Crucial Conversations. And the reason I read it again and took summary notes and discussed it with my team members is that I'm often in those difficult conversations, not just with customers, but also internally. And Elio, it's an amazing book. So I'd encourage you, if you're looking to develop your communication skills, that's a great resource. Educate and train the sales force in the features and use of Tableau. I love that part of it. Training and coaching was my life for 25 years. Even as a partner, I ran enablement sessions for AEs, for other partners, for customers around data and analytics, and then providing proactive support to customers and prospects. I run lunch and learns, and then I'll speak. For example, I spoke recently in Canberra, about 300 kilometers away, which I think is about 180 miles, 190 miles. I spoke at an event in our capital city, like your Washington, D.C., Canberra, and spoke on the subject of accelerating a data culture. So that was super fun. Literally, I would have driven there and spoken for the fun of it. So I feel very spoiled in that I get well paid for a job that I love. It isn't perfect. There are challenges. I think every role has aspects that you don't particularly enjoy, but that's just life. But I think, if you're in a role like me where 80% of what you do, you love, you look forward to, you're really blessed.
Yeah, yeah, and I can definitely relate to the challenges or pieces of the role that you love to do and maybe don't love to do so much. Um, you had talked about in your journey, you've done account executive work, you've been a business development. What made you stay in the solution engineering realm? What keeps you here?
Oh, that's a great question. So as far as the broader ecosystem, Salesforce, Tableau, initially I love technology. I love solving problems. Uh, I love learning. I use that word love a lot. The community is amazing. I actually, beginning as a Salesforce admin, a business analyst, moving into a consultant role, I actually fell into the sales and pre-sales arena because as we planted a business and started a new um, Salesforce partnership, someone had to be in sales and pre-sales. I had the technical background. I had no sales experience, literally at all, none, zero, nada. But years of experience at speaking, presenting, influencing, etc. That's how I got to speak in 43 states in America. I had the privilege of traveling and speaking. I wrote a book on depression. I did a book tour, which was experience of a lifetime. So I essentially put up my hand. I love challenges, as you can probably tell. I said, look, I'll have a stab at it, and did tons of self-learning. I've been reading, for example, even recently, some stuff by Daniel Pink in the area of sales, which I found really interesting. I took his class. If anyone knows Masterclass, some great stuff on Masterclass. I took his class on Masterclass. And as I got involved in sales and pre-sales, there were areas of it that I loved and areas of it that I didn't love. And the area that I really didn't love was kind of the end of it, the closing, the negotiation, the back and forth. Um, I'm not particularly comfortable with confrontation, and I found that part challenging. I felt that often I left a lot on the table because I would acquiesce with people. I found it a bit stressful. Whereas the SE side, because I was doing both, felt like, man, I could do this as my full-time job, rest of my life, and I'd just be absolutely stoked. So that I really fell into the SE role. I wasn't looking to do that because I primarily was hoping to begin as a consultant and also leading the business. And eventually I realized I can either continue juggling all these different balls, SE, BD, pre-sale, sales, or I can look for a job that's focused on being purely an SE, which is what I decided to do. So, I mean, it combines learning, solution design, building, presenting, and training. And that really summarizes why I love it.
I guess a question that I wanted to ask was much like myself, I didn't have any sales experience prior to assuming the role either. How did you overcome this?
Yeah, look, my favorite quote, probably for the last 10 years of my life, Richard Branson: if someone offers you an amazing opportunity, say yes and then figure out how to do it later. So honestly, a lot of what I learned was really, it sounds so basic, but just trying, failing, learning, trying, failing, learning, looking at failure not as failure, but as a learning experience. I had business partners that were, I think, to their credit, very patient with me. Initially, there was feedback that, Mark is not, shall I say, for want of a better term, aggressive enough, because that's not really my personality. And I learned to take the initiative in conversations without changing who I am. I didn't want to change who I am, but I understood the need to take more initiative and take control of conversations without becoming that aggressive kind of, that stereotypical aggressive, arrogant salesperson. And I'm sure there are salespeople on the call that will laugh at that. I work with salespeople all the time, and very few of them are like that. But that's what I did not want to become. As far as learning the role, one thing I didn't mention was probably about a year into the role, I was very fortunate. I was chosen by Salesforce for a program that I don't think exists anymore, which was the Thrive program. It's a program that was instituted for partner SEs. So realizing that there were not enough SEs internally, Salesforce actually took the initiative to pick a few partner team members, consultants, business leaders, and I think it was a 12-month program that I engaged in. And there are 3 tiers of certification. There was in-person learning. It was pre-COVID. There was virtual learning. There was a lot of mentoring. There were peer certification panels, which were both exciting and quite challenging. And so I went through all 3 tiers of that certification and became a certified partner solution engineer. And that was extremely helpful because it helped me understand how to navigate the way that Salesforce sells. And I'll use the term, if you're not sure what this is, I'd encourage you to Google it if this area does interest you, consultative selling. And it's a very important concept. Many of you would be familiar with it, I suppose. But the idea is that instead of going in and showing off features and trying to essentially force a product on someone and close a deal, consultative selling is all about, I think the key word is empathy. Putting yourself in the shoes of the customer, understanding his or her challenges, their problems, their pain points, painting the art of the possible for them, and then coming up with a technology solution that will help them, and then presenting that back to them. It's very different to what we might think of as traditional sales, but it's the key of really what I do. And it's an area that I'm really seeking to improve in and to excel at. So that was a key area of learning for me. Also, just honestly, being on sales calls with some really brilliant people from Salesforce. I worked very closely as a partner with Salesforce AEs, and some of them I just loved being on calls with them because of the way they interacted with customers. I'll call someone out. He's a manager now, Dean Potter. He was an SE then. I'm sorry, an AE then. And I would be on calls with Dean, and I would be on the call to assist him, but I'd be furiously copying down notes on what he was saying and how he was saying it and how he was responding, questions he was asking. I think it's like anything when you're reinventing your life or you're just pivoting in your career. You've got to have curiosity. You've got to have a learner mindset, and I think if you do, you'll go far.
Yeah, those are all great points. And it's interesting, the concept of consultative selling. I did put a link in the chat there if you want to take a brief look at how Zendesk defines it. We do have a question, so I want to turn it over to Erica, who's had her hand up. Erica, you have the floor.
Thanks, David. I did want to take a chance. This is my first time here, so thank you for putting this on.
Welcome.
This is incredible, and I just love that you guys do this. And Mark, I did have a question for you. I have a data background, and I actually have a sales background as well. So the fact that you work so closely with the sales team is really intriguing to me because I've been on both sides of that coin. And so I just had a question about really how you prepare like a pre-sale support for a salesperson to go into a meeting. Like what do you have access to in that period of time? And what are you able to do with that? Because when I worked in sales, I worked in a very specific industry. So it was a little bit easier because the industry, you have one product you're selling, but technology is such a broad industry and you could get into so many different niches. I'm just really interested in how you prepare for that and what you have to prepare for that.
Yeah, that's actually a great question, Erica. Lovely to meet you, and I'm glad you're able to join today. So I actually have an unwritten rule that if I get invited to a customer-facing call just out of nowhere, then I don't accept it until I've spoken with the account executive, figured out what's the objective of this meeting, what's the agenda, who's the customer, what's the history. I've made the mistake before, both as a partner and as a Tableau SE, of coming into a call and really realizing, I'm not prepared for this. And so what I'll do is, generally speaking, I love to have a detailed call with the account executive, depending on the customer and the deal, the size of the deal. I don't mean necessarily from a dollar perspective, but more about complexity of the solution. Then, that call could be as short as 15 minutes. For an enterprise customer, it's going to be a lot longer, because I cover everything from SMB, commercial, and enterprise. There's a real broad spectrum there. We use Quip internally, and we use Slack for messaging. I essentially live in Quip, so I'll ask the account executive to share their notes in Quip, and very often those notes can be extremely copious and complex. So often I'll ask them to actually curate a copy of those for me, so that I don't have to wade through 1,000 lines of someone's detailed meeting notes. And then I'll have the call with the account executive. And what I'm trying to find out is, what's the background here? What's this call about? What are the main question for me is, what's the problem? Before I worked for Tableau, it was why Salesforce, why analytics. It's more focused now, why Tableau or why CRM analytics, because I cover both. But why analytics, you could say. And then also, I'll actually perform my own research. So I'd love to know who's going to be in the call, what's their role in this conversation. I use LinkedIn an awful lot, checking on people's backgrounds. I love to go into a call as soon as I find I have something in common with them, whatever the case may be, and I'll research their business. If it's a big conversation, and again, a larger commercial or enterprise customer, I'll actually go to the point often of reading news articles and find out what's been happening in that industry, what's been happening with that customer. A lot of it does depend on the size of the customer, the size of the opportunity. There are also strategic opportunities, and how we define those is, it can be a small opportunity, but there's a roadmap. So this is an opportunity to deliver some value, show value within an organization, develop a champion or champions, and then begin to grow the Tableau footprint. And I don't just say that from a sales perspective, Erica. I could not sell Tableau if I wasn't passionate about it. I have to believe in the solution, and I will not recommend it if it is not a fit. In fact, once I actually was in a discussion with a customer who wanted to purchase Einstein Discovery Machine Learning. Their data didn't support it. The use case didn't support it. And I had a very frank conversation with that customer at the risk of upsetting an account executive. This was as a partner. And I said, look, it's just not a fit for you. It's not going to deliver for you. Let's look at some other options, which I came up with. And, David, to your point, at that point, I became a trusted advisor, because they thought, you know what, you're not just selling something, you're giving me sound advice based on facts, not based on remuneration on my perspective. And from there, we actually began to help sell CRMA. So that's a long answer to a short question, but I hope that's helpful.
No, absolutely. And I agree. As soon as you have a realistic answer for their situation, you become a partner instead of a salesperson. So I love that.
And that's always the goal. That's always the goal.
Absolutely. Do you mind if I ask another follow-up question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go right ahead, Erica. That's why we're here.
Okay, great. What is the background of a successful solution engineer look like coming into a position?
That's a great question. So I gave that some thought before the call. So I would say that, in fact, David, if you don't mind, I think it's my last slide talks about who is a solution engineer. It might be helpful if we can show that, please.
Yeah,
so as
go ahead and bring that back up.
Slide, aside from, I think for an analytics pre-sales role, you have to have a data mindset. Looking back to my role, where I also was an SE for Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Community Cloud, Pardot, a technology mindset, as not specifically a data mindset. So I've just got a few points here. You've got to be technically savvy. So I'll be very honest with you. I came into Tableau with a strong background in CRM analytics, Einstein Discovery, Salesforce. Very weak background in Tableau as such. I did not have a strong handle on Tableau at the end of last year, but I was hired for Tableau. So I was hired knowing that I was not an expert in the platform that I was going to co-sell. But I love technology, I love learning. And so much of the last few months have been focused on getting a really strong grasp on the technology. But you have to come in and be the person that has an aptitude for learning technology. Definitely right at the top of the list, strong communication and presentation skills, which you can learn, by the way. So if you don't have those, but you love tech, you love solving problems, you can learn the communication and presentation skills. Someone recently complimented me on a talk, and I thanked them, and I said, don't forget, I've spent the last, 30 years of my life mostly public speaking. So, I didn't just kind of come out of the womb. I probably did talk because I talk a lot, but, just practice and learning, loving problem solving, detail oriented. That's actually really important. One point I don't have in here, I think, organized. I could not perform my role if I didn't live by my schedule and have a way of managing my to-do list. Even when I take meeting notes, I have a Remarkable tablet, just a quick plug for them. And I take my notes on my Remarkable tablet, and then I convert that to text and email it to myself. That probably saves me 1 or 2 hours a day just in that. I don't have to spend ages transcribing all my handwritten notes. You've got to be a team player. You've got to play well with others. And honestly, just passion and enthusiasm go a long way. What I don't have in there, probably I would add, would be analytical and critical thinking, project management, again, a skill that you can learn. And if you're going for a role like mine, which is, it's not the top level of a solution engineer, but it's not an entry level either. It's probably a mid-level role. Even in I think the job posting, they asked for 5 years experience in sales, which I didn't have, but was able to get in anyway. Multiple certifications are helpful, but not required. So I've actually gone through a lot of training since I've joined, technical as well as sales training, and recently gained the new Tableau certification for, I think it's called the Data Analyst certification. So you don't have to have all the certifications when you come in. I think for partners, it's a case by case, and for vendors, it's case by case. But I do know, that in my particular role, they were looking for 5 years. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you so much.
And thank you, Erica, for the questions. It's funny, the last one was actually in my notes, which is maybe why Mark prepared for it, because so great choice. All right. So what I'll do now is I did want to get to Kerry's question. She's going to watch the recording. And so Kerry asked, I'd love to hear any tips you have regarding gathering business requirements during your time as a digital business analyst.
Yeah, that was probably one of the favorite parts of my role as a DBA. And I'm sure that the engineering background would have helped in that respect. But these are obviously, I'll go back to those days. They were pre-COVID, and essentially we would have, maybe not a mind map in the true sense of that term, but I would prepare questions beforehand for various business stakeholders. I will say one mistake I made early on that was a big one that I learned the hard way: always have different personas in the room. And often you're wise to have a group of different personas, but then also meet with those personas individually. And the reason for that is you might be in a room, for example, in my case back then, I would have had the business owner, I would have had a financial advisor, but I also would have had a customer service manager in the room who at that point was less senior. And then they may not speak up depending on their personality and their confidence in a team meeting and say to the CEO, hey, you think that's how we do this, but that's not how we do this, right? So they may remain quiet. So that's why I would meet with them separately and say, hey, that was a great session. I just wanted to meet with you individually. And I'd talk through some specific questions depending on the process that I was trying to map out. But then I would say, is there anything that you wanted to add? Is there anything you feel like we've got wrong? And that often would give rise to a discussion. In fact, I do remember one use case where I actually met, and this was a mistake, I met only with the CEO and the founder of the business, and they walked me through an extremely complex process. I think it took 2 hours to talk through this process. Ridiculous. And I felt like I had a good handle on it. And fortunately, before I began to, map out the solution and actually build anything in Salesforce, I met with the customer service manager. In fact, I met with two of them, and both of them disagreed with the map that we had created from the session with the founder and the CEO. And I found out how leadership thought the team was doing something was not only how it was not being done, but the two people working with the customers in the same role were doing things differently. And then that led to a great conversation that the business really had no consistency of process, which was a great opportunity. We actually mapped and built 40 processes in Salesforce. Back then, I'm trying to remember the name of the tool, David. I think it's Conga Orchestrate now. It used to be called Process Composer. And that was a great tool to help you map and build processes with clicks, not code, because I've never been a dev. And, mapping and building 40 processes, other than all the rich data you can imagine, that then we built into CRM Analytics that honestly changed the way that they worked. It also really, it created a consistency across the business and a visibility and a transparency in how people performed their role. So the only point I would add to that around discovery, get really good at taking notes and always record the sessions.
Yeah, that's awesome to be able to refer back to that afterwards and check to make sure your notes are accurate. And just to piggyback on what you said earlier, that diversity of experience, having that during your stakeholder meetings obviously is key to not leaving anyone out of the planning and then having to, submit changes afterwards because you didn't realize that you'd missed something. So that's a great point as well. Great question, Kerry. What we'll do next is we'll move on to Garrick's question. And so, again, Garrick must have been reading my script because he's asking one of the questions that I was going to ask. So great job. He says, Mark, do you have a recommendation for those interested in Tableau, the best way to learn and break into it? Is that Trailhead? Is that, being a consultant or seeking out those who already work in it?
Wow, that's a great question. And obviously very fitting for me because I began learning Tableau last year as a partner, got my first certification last year, and then I've been knee deep in Tableau all of this year. So first of all, I will say Tableau has, and prior to acquisition by Salesforce, had a fantastic community. For example, my LinkedIn feed is currently being completely hijacked by the Tableau data conference posts from all my friends, and I'm completely jealous. But a very powerful, very supportive, passionate, smart community. Get involved with the Tableau community. Various ways to do that online. I'm sure you can find that by searching yourself. Aside from that, you can sign up for a free trial license. But I think one thing that I did early on was I actually signed up for Tableau Public. So without paying for anything, you can get a limited version of Tableau. And if you just search for Tableau Public, you'll be able to find all that information. David, I'm quite happy to find some links to share afterward if you would like me to do that. You can actually get a version of the software yourself, and you can create a public profile on Tableau Public. And not only can you begin to use public data sets from places like Kaggle, even on the Tableau Public site, they have sources for public data sets. Obviously, just a caveat, never post anything on there that's business related or has any kind of private information, because it is obviously an entirely public platform by virtue of the name. And you can look at what others have built. For example, if you're involved in banking, you can go to Tableau Public and just search banking. You'll see all kinds of amazing banking dashboards built in Tableau. So that's an area where I learned a lot. Also, just make a note of Makeover Monday, Workout Wednesday. So Makeover Monday, Workout Wednesday, these are challenges that are posted publicly. data set is shared, use case is shared. The idea for Makeover Monday is to take a poorly designed solution in Tableau and remake it as you would make it to improve it. Workout Wednesday is solving a challenge that's presented to you. Both of them, again, come with the data sets, the use cases. And then a certain period of time after, videos will be shared as to how they were solved and different ways of solving them. Fantastic learning. There's also a lot of free e-learning available for Tableau. There's paid e-learning available for Tableau. And then I'll just give a quick plug for my favorite YouTube channel, which is Tableau Tim. And I don't remember his last name, but if you go into YouTube and look for Tableau Tim, fantastic content. Even as an SE, recently there's a feature called virtual connections that I wasn't familiar with, and a customer had asked a question about it, and I studied at help, and that was useful. But he had this video, and I love it because they're short and to the point, they're visual. He's just a great communicator. So that there's a quick plug there for Tableau Tim. Oh, thank you, David. You've shared the link.
Yep, I've got Makeover Monday and Workout Wednesday in there as well. Awesome.
Oh,
great question,
sweet.
Garrett.
Yes.
So we do have more questions. Ellie, did you have a comment you wanted to weigh in?
I had a quick question to Mark. His thoughts about the marketing name, the name change. What is this CRMA thing? How does that?
Oh, let me piggyback that with Geraldine's question. That's perfect, because Geraldine's question, which is directly related to that, she says, "Hey, can you explain the difference between legacy Tableau and CRM Analytics? There's a lot of confusion there." So great.
Yeah, absolutely. So while I'm talking, I'm also looking up my blog. I wrote a blog post, let's see, October 2020, which is relevant to the Tableau CRM conversation. So this blog is more around, it's actually called, "Are You Confused About Einstein, Tableau, and Tableau CRM?" Because I had so many conversations with AEs, SEs, partners, and definitely customers. I had customers sign up. I would ask them to sign up for a Tableau CRM / Einstein Analytics / CRM Analytics environment to learn. And they came back saying, "This looks different to what you demoed me." And it was a Tableau trial license. Tons of confusion out there. So I've just, hopefully you can see that. There's a link there in the chat. That's my article. So I think, yeah, we don't have time to get into all the details here, so that will answer your questions. Essentially, the way I look at it is I look at CRM Analytics as process intelligence, not your broad BI platform. It's embedded in Salesforce CRM. It's designed for Salesforce CRM. And really, most of the time, users should be using that in Salesforce. Unless they're a builder and a creator, they probably shouldn't even be in Analytics Studio. It's designed, in fact, I demoed yesterday to a very large customer in Australia, and I don't think I used the term CRM Analytics once. I didn't talk about Einstein, none of that. I talked about intelligence. This is Salesforce intelligence. This is Salesforce Analytics. It's all about the Salesforce user having that embedded intelligence. The beauty is it doesn't have to be purely based on Salesforce data. That's a misunderstanding. CRM Analytics is great at bringing in data from other platforms. And the benefit there is you don't have to clutter up a Salesforce environment with tons of spurious, or not spurious, but extraneous data that isn't relevant to operations and process, but is relevant to analytics. For example, you might be grabbing Google Analytics data, which is extremely granular data around engagement. You're going to aggregate that, transform it, filter it, combine it with Salesforce information. Maybe you're combining it with marketing automation information like Pardot. You bring all that together in CRM Analytics, and then what you're doing is you're bringing a version of that, kind of a condensed, relevant version back into Salesforce. So now the Salesforce user can see information that's more contextual and more relevant, not just Salesforce data, but it's got to be there in the workflow. Tableau is data for everyone, everywhere. Our slogan is "We help people see and understand data," right? It's your broad business intelligence platform. Can it be embedded in Salesforce? Absolutely. Can it use Salesforce data? Absolutely. But when I'm looking at a use case and I'm talking to a customer or an account executive or a partner, My first question is, how are these insights going to be used? Not where is the data? How are these insights going to be used? If it's in Salesforce, almost all the time it's going to be CRM Analytics. If it's outside of Salesforce or it's both, it's probably going to be Tableau. And as far as the detailed differences between them, that's a long discussion. Literally, I've run whole sessions on that with account executives and partners. That's why I put the link in the chat.
Awesome.
Oh, the
Thank
name
you
change.
for-
I'm sorry, Elio. The name change. My bad. I always felt that calling it Tableau CRM was really confusing. And I'm probably going to meet the person one day who was responsible for that name change, and they're going to tell me off. But dealing with customers as I did, and AEs and partners, never-ending source of confusion. I had conversations every week about that. CRM analytics to me makes a lot more sense because that's what it is. It's process analytics. It's in CRM. Tableau is your general BI tool. Like any rebranding and renaming, Elio. I mean, we went through this with our business. We rebranded it last year, renamed it. There's a period of transition where people are asking questions, and when you're posting, you're often saying CRM analytics in parentheses, aka Tableau CRM, right? But usually I think give it about 6 months, people will start to get used to it. But I think overall it's a good move.
Yeah, I enjoyed that name much more as well. Hopefully, Salesforce decides to keep it and not change it again in 6 months, which has been the pattern. But we'll see.
We shall see.
We've got a kind of a follow-up tie-in question. So Jonathan asks, how does Tableau apply to Salesforce Education Cloud for data analytics? Could you use it for student academic performance indicators?
That's a great question, and one that I'm really glad you asked. So as a partner, we actually engaged in a crowdsourcing project, and I could share that information privately. So whoever it was who asked that question, if you can message me in LinkedIn, I can actually share the outcome of that crowdsourcing project. And we were very privileged. We worked with 20 universities. I flew to the States, went to university in, was it New Orleans? And that was super fun. Side point, New Orleans, amazing city. And we actually worked with people like Harvard and Yale, excuse me, Harvard, Yale, just a moment, Cornell, many universities in the States. And the challenge was around students at risk. So the ability to combine data from multiple platforms, including Salesforce. We built a machine learning model to identify students that were at risk. And in the States, whoever asked that, you'd be all over this. But, there are certain criteria that you have to meet to be considered persistent, such as a certain GPA, finishing, I think, within 1.5 times the standard course length. There are 4 or 5 different factors, and it relates to government funding and all of that. And I actually, in my case, built the model, super fun, and were able to identify students at risk and then bring that back into Salesforce. And while I'm talking, I do believe I have a video that I can share of that, which we built, which is public facing, around exactly how we solve for that problem. We were able to, in a prototype, we were able to build a model for that, and then also we were able to bring those insights back into Salesforce where you could action them. We also looked at use cases around recruitment. A lot of the challenges, though, didn't come back to technology, came back to data. We found that it was challenging sometimes to get different departments to share data across department, different owners, right? Different platforms and data. But if you want to hear more about what we did, you can message me on LinkedIn, and I'll also see if I can find that video for you.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you. All right. So, folks, we have about 5 minutes left. And what I would like to do just before we close is ask a question about culture. So obviously, we've had enough folks on the show from Salesforce that we kind of know what Salesforce culture is about. Most of us are either entering or in the ecosystem. We've got a good feel for it. And while Tableau is a Salesforce company, Tableau has its own distinct culture. I would love to know, Mark, a little bit about Tableau culture. If you could explain what it's like to work there from a cultural perspective, because you've got to be happy where you work, as we all know, and culture plays a big role in that?
It's a great question, David. I'll probably say that to every question on the call because it's really been an engaging conversation. So probably many of you, maybe not some of you, are familiar with the Salesforce culture, the Salesforce values around equality, trust, customer success, innovation, sustainability. Obviously, those values are mirrored in Tableau. But again, Tableau came to the table pre-acquisition with a very public, well-known, passionate culture of its own. And I would say right at the top of the list is just learning. People in the Tableau community incredibly passionate about learning, but also I think helping others to learn. I'm just absolutely amazed at the amount of great content. I mean, I gave you an example in Tableau Tim, and there are so many other YouTube channels, YouTube contributors. There's someone, and this would be worth Googling because I know we don't have much time, but if you Google Tableau visionaries, they used to be Tableau Zen masters. And those of you who know Tableau, I'm sure you're familiar with those amazing individuals. These are some extraordinary men and women that not only are really gurus with Tableau, but they love to give back. They inspire, they instruct, they're trailblazers thank you, David, in the true sense of that term. I've reached out to them. I always get his name wrong. I'm going to look it up while I'm talking to you. I think it's Flolage. And I think that's the one where they're twins. I'm going to look that up while I'm chatting. They're a great example. What they do is many of them, Flolage. Many of them actually, they have blog posts. You could message them. I'll share the link in the chat for you. You can message them with a question. They'll not only respond, many of them will get on a call with you. There may be a role in the Tableau ecosystem. For example, Ken is at a partner business, the link I just shared. You're like, well, what's it like to work for a Tableau partner? You reach out to them. Many of them would get on a call with you and give you half an hour of their time and just in their own personal, private time, taking away time potentially from family and friends to talk to you about the ecosystem, the technology, the role, the opportunities. We're in an incredible space as far as opportunities go. When I left engineering, I had no idea that I'd end up moving into a data space, even though many engineers are in the data space. And if you asked me, Mark, you've got a degree in mechanical engineering, if you could right now leave the data space and go and be a mechanical engineer, it wouldn't even be a question that I would consider. It's a no-brainer. I love where I am and amazing opportunities inside Salesforce, outside of Salesforce. So, hopefully that helps answer that question.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it seems like there are a lot of commonalities between Salesforce and Tableau culture, but it's also a great complement to Salesforce culture. So very helpful to know. Folks, we have about a minute and a half left, so I just wanted to offer that last minute and a half. If anyone had a final question for Mark, and I'll give you a second to think about that. And if you don't, I do, but you get first priority.
And again, please reach out through please reach out through LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter. It's just my name as one word, @Mark Tossell. I do respond through LinkedIn and Twitter, and more than happy to answer questions or share useful information. I just want to quickly say one thing. You touched on it, David. One of the best things I ever did as a brand new business analyst, I had never been on LinkedIn. I created a LinkedIn profile and I started sharing some of my work. I started sharing articles. I connected with people. That had probably a lot to do with me eventually getting this dream job. So I'd encourage people to develop your brand. David can share lots of great resources and thinking around that. But I think that's really important in this day and age.
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's a great way to close the session because branding really ties it all together. And as I often tell people, you can have, like Mark, you can have all the certifications, you can have great work experience, but if you're not telling people about the value that you can add to their company or their organization, by creating your brand and marketing and on social media, then how are they going to know about that? Right. So it's not bragging. It's offering your value proposition to be able to help others solve problems that are important to them. And it is definitely worth your time to spend time each day working toward building that brand and expanding your network so that you can get your value out in front of those companies that may want to hire you. And even if you're not looking for a job, you have no idea who may want to hire you. I didn't know I wanted to be a solution engineer until someone said, "Hey, Dave, do you want to be a solution engineer?" And I was like, let me look it up. Then sure. But it's because of my brand that opportunity came to me and I was able to make that choice. So great comment,
super
Mark.
quick one, David. Sorry, I know we're at time. One thing that really helped me as I prepared for the quite daunting prospect of 6 Salesforce interviews, including a Tableau demo to a panel of quite senior people, was I learned about job deconstruction. And there was a book that I read that I'll have to look up. I don't have it at hand, but it talked about job deconstruction. That was extremely helpful in preparing for those daunting interviews. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. I'm going to look that up as well. Job deconstruction. Appreciate that. Folks, we are at time. So what we'll do here is before we close, I do want to thank Mark for spending the past hour with us to educate us on all things Tableau, Tableau Solution Engineering, data analytics. It's been phenomenal. Thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. It's been great to meet everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure as well. And thank you to all of you for spending your hour with us this week. If I could just put a quick plug for the Military Trailblazer Office Hours company page, which is brand new. You can follow it on LinkedIn, and then that's where we will be posting our recordings from now on. And so that's a great way to stay notified of up and coming sessions and then have access to those recordings. Please join us next week.
That book was the ultimate job search guide. Sorry to interrupt you.
Excellent. No, perfect. The ultimate job search guide. Just say it again so folks watching
really enjoyed it.
And that's on Job Deconstruction. Fantastic. All right. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening, and hopefully we'll see you back here next week. Have a safe one. Thank you so much.